episode 313. I'm your host, Keith Andrew. Along here with Cliff Galbraith. And I just want to say thank you for being a guest on my talk show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be anywhere.
Now, the whole point of my talk show is to show people that even with having a learning disability, I can still overcome controversy and reach my goals in life. At the same time, I'm able to turn myself into a perfect example for people out there dealing with any types of learning disabilities and disabilities. That you should never give up, and you should prove to people you can still amount to something. That labels do not dictate who you are and who you're going to be. And like I said, labels don't dictate who you are and who you're going to be, so you should prove to them you can still amount to something. So that being said, half hour, 45 minutes of your time. Say anything you want. Freedom of speech, freedom of self-expression. And starting off, for our listeners who want to know, you are the creator of the New Jersey Comic Con. And for, one of the Comic Cons, because, New Jersey's a big place.
Apparently, it is a big place now. It didn't used to be a big place. New Jersey was always a tiny place, and now it seems to be some kind of ground zero for con wars, as a friend of mine likes to call it. There's several shows. We're the largest, and we've been around the longest. And that ain't saying much. We've been around for 5 years. And we started up as the Asbury Park Comic Con. We outgrew Asbury Park. We had a great time at Asbury Park. But we had a much more indie vibe, even though we had a lot of mainstream comic guys come down, but we also had a lot of indie people. We moved up to Secaucus, New Jersey in, I'm going to say, 2015. And the show changed dramatically, and the reason it changed was because we went from being in a very old-timey, quirky, fun place in Asbury Park. I mean, Asbury Park's a fun town. It's not your usual beach town. There's a lot of history there. There's a lot of bars. There's a lot of galleries. There's a lot of punk rockers. There's a large gay community, and so it has a lot to offer. Secaucus is Secaucus, and it's just some spot in North Jersey. It doesn't really have a personality. Nobody is spending their weekend summers there. Nobody wants to really go there unless you live there, and then you want to get home at the end of the day. Not to make fun of Secaucus. But our concern was, about going to Secaucus was, we never really wanted to throw a show in a box, in a generic convention box.
Right.
And what we found was that there's a good reason that people have conventions. Stick with me on this one. There's a good reason people have conventions in convention centers. I know that sounds pretty obvious. One of the reasons is access and egress. If you throw a convention in a hotel, not everybody going in and out of the hotel wants to go to your convention. They want to get to their room. They want to check in. They want to go to the restaurant. They want to get out of your way. And you're creating mayhem in what is normally a hotel. And the guests that aren't going to the convention, they really don't appreciate it. We had one woman who complained that she was getting married, and that how dare we throw a comic convention at a hotel when she was getting married. And as it turned out, I looked out the window from Convention Hall. This was the year before we were at the hotel, but we had taken over the hotel for rooms. And all our cosplayers and people going to the convention were on the boardwalk. And I looked out the window, and there was this woman who had been complaining how we were going to ruin her wedding. There she was with her new husband, posing on the beach, with a bunch of stormtroopers and reenacting the wedding with Darth Vader as the officiant. So all's well that ends well.
So you turn a negative into a positive.
She did, yeah. It was really a great sight, and we really didn't want to mess with anybody's wedding. So there's a lot of problems with throwing a show in a hotel, and that is you can't control who goes in and out of all the exits, and so you have to have people on all the doors, and you're asking people for ID to go in and out of the, for their badges. And they're like, well, we're not going to your Comic-Con. We're just going to our room. So it creates a problem. A lot of people kind of slip in and slip out that shouldn't be. So with the comic convention, in a convention center, you have the front door, and that's it.
Right.
So that solves that problem. And there was a lot of other things that we had to do to throw a convention at a hotel that we couldn't do at a convention center. And so the convention center it really is the way to throw a convention. And we felt that it didn't have a lot of soul. It didn't have a lot of personality, and I guess we brought the personality. I think our show has a good vibe. I think it has a good personality. We got a great staff of people that work the show, and I think that goes wherever we pitch our tent. That's gonna show.
No, absolutely. And I have two questions for you.
Sure.
And the first one is, I would love to be a part of your show. We can always talk about that off the air.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ever want me to promote or play any episodes or commercials for you, feel free to ask. And it's funny we shouldn't be talking about, having Comic-Con or conventions in a hotel. There's one coming up, I think March 4th. It's sometime in March, and it's called WrestleCon. And they're going to be in LaGuardia, a hotel plaza. Now, with that same thing, you run into the same problems. You have people who want to go to their rooms who are just getting off the plane, but at the same time, you're also interacting with same things you were going through. So how did that experience work out? Do you still recommend it, or do you just say stay away from hotels?
Well, here's the thing. The hotel is a good way to get started off. It's also, there are many cons that have been running in hotels for years, and the big ones, they just take over the entire hotel, and they have a really good relationship with the hotel. Unfortunately, what happened was with Asbury Park was the hotel had a pretty constant turnover of managers. So whatever deals and relationships we made with the manager that was there at the time was not the manager that was the manager when we had our event. So we would sign with one manager, we'd make a deal, we'd get friendly with them, we'd ask them for certain things. They'd say, yeah, sure, here you go, you can do this, you can do that. And then a new manager would come in and say, no, you can't do that, and no, this isn't proper, and you can't do that. And then another manager would come in and say, I don't know what they were talking about. So it got really, really frustrating. And one of them even told us, I said, I wanted to come down here and make a 5-year deal with you. And the one woman said, well, we're really not in the convention business. We're in the wedding and bar mitzvah business and,
right.
Things like that. And to which I thought, well, okay, they've let me know what their intentions are. And then the next manager came in and said, why would she ever tell you something like that? We're in the business of doing business. That's our business. We want to fill up these ballrooms with customers and fill up these hotel rooms with customers. And we don't care what the event is as long as people behave themselves. And I said, well, I've already signed with the convention center in North Jersey at that point, and they tried to do everything they could to get us to stay. But at that point, and they had raised the price quite a bit. So hotels can be expensive. Hotels, the difference with hotels is they work on short-term relationships. Convention centers, I believe that they want to build a long-term relationship. I could be wrong, but we have now a pretty good long-term relationship with the people at the Meadowlands. They're great people to deal with, and they want us to come back every year. So we're comfortable, they're comfortable, we know what to expect from them, they know what to expect from us, And that part of run the show is taken care of now, which is a great relief.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, I'm going to ask you some hard-hitting questions about how getting into the business, and then I'm going to pass the show over to you. You can ask me anything you want.
Oh, sure.
A message for yourself or as a gift for someone else. For personal connections, shout-outs, birthdays, proposals, weddings, and much more. Enter your details about yourself so the celebrity can record a personal video message especially for you, including details such as your name, age, birthday, hobbies, or whatever else you include. As soon as the video has been recorded, you'll get an email with your link so you can share it on social media or download and keep it. Celebrities record videos as and when they can, usually within 2 weeks. But if you want a video for a specific date and it does not look like it will arrive in time, you can cancel it and get an instant refund at the click of a button. There are hundreds of celebrities to choose from and many more joining every day. Search by category or genre, buy a gift voucher, get updates and offers, and encourage your favorite celebrities to join so they can connect with fans in a fun and unique way. Raise money for their charities and much more. So order your video now for yourself or for someone else.
I'm so bored.
Want to see something really cool?
Yeah!
Now you'll never be bored again with Loot Crate, a totally bodacious mystery box packed with awesome toys, radical games, and other surprises. And the best part is, you can get Loot Crate delivered right to your door. So don't delay. Ask your parents and order today.
Everything okay in there? Yeah, everything great. I love Loot Crate.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 313. I'm your host, Keith Andrew. It's a good friend of mine, the creator of one of the biggest New Jersey Comic-Cons in history, Mr. Cliff Galbraith. Cliff Galbraith. Sorry, I had a brain fart.
That's okay.
I'm here with Cliff Galbraith. And now, for people who want to break into the Comic-Con business, I give you a perfect example. I want to have the opportunity to work with you and work with another company. For an example, I am in the process of working with the Hudson Valley Comic Con in Poughkeepsie, and they were nice enough to give me a free table. But I feel like at this point I would say thank you, but right now it isn't good. But I don't want to be a dick about it because I'm the one who approached them, and I told them, I really want to work with you guys. It's like, okay, here's the table. Yeah, I don't know what to do. So the question for you is, when you were first starting out, put yourself in my position.
Sure.
You're just starting out. People know you have a talk show. Do you think you should just take the opportunity and run with it? And it's like, okay, I don't have any props. I don't have anything to hand out. It's just me at a table. Do you think that's good enough for a start?
Well, number one, if you're going to have a table at any convention, you need signage.
Yeah.
And you've seen probably at conventions now the most popular thing is the retractable pop-up. It's about 6 feet tall or so. Pop-up banner. It's about so wide, about 31 inches wide, I think is. Wide's 31, I have no idea, but 31 inches wide by 6 feet tall or so. They come in different sizes, but that's about the standard. And you can get one of those for, I think they're about $100 now. Get a friend who knows something about graphic design. And the key to making a good one is have all your information in the top third, because if you have information going down towards the bottom, it's going to be behind your table. Nobody's going to see it.
Yeah.
Make it bright. Make it simple. Don't crowd it with too much stuff. Don't try to give people too much information. And Keith, in your situation, you would have some kind of logo. It would say the name of your show. It might say your name. That's plenty. That way people know what it is that you're offering. And you might want to have some postcards. Postcards are really, really cheap to get made now. You can get them. You can get 5,000 of them for $100. We give them out all the time. You might want to give those out at your booth. You say, here's my show. That gives some people something to walk away with. Or a business card. Business card, you can get printed on both sides, colorful. Have your show on one side, and on the other side, your email and your phone number and your Skype address, or whatever you want to put. So always have business cards. And you're set. You're in business. That way, you're not just sitting at a table waiting for somebody to come by and ask you what you're doing there, because that's what's going to happen. And I've seen a lot of people, even artists, that don't bring signage, that don't have. There's nothing to tell you who they are unless the promoter provides some kind of. A lot of times you'll see a white card about this big, right. And about 20-something inches long or so, and it has their name on it in a very dull typeface. It's that way at every convention I've ever been to, whether it's clothing or comics or any kind of business convention, graphics conventions. If you're lucky, you'll have a sign with your name on it that they'll have made for you. But you don't want to rely on that. You always want to control your message. Right. So we're in a graphic business, comics, and you're competing with somebody's eye, with all these images, all these costume people, and there you are with your promoter-supplied white, boring card hanging up above your head. So you want to have a nice, bright sign. You want to have some nice cards to hand out so that people remember you, so that people can get in touch with you. You would be amazed how many people. I go to conventions. I go to New York Comic Con. I go to all the conventions. Go to Baltimore Comic Con, Boston Con. I go and I talk to artists. And I say, how you doing? I'm Cliff. And they say, yeah, I know who you are. Or, yeah, I've heard of East Coast Comic Con. How you doing? Would you like to come to our show? I would like to come to your show if I can find some time in my schedule. Why don't you drop me an email? Oh, do you have a card? No, I don't have a card. You're an artist. You're at a business. This is a business. These conventions, and you don't have any cards. And so now they're trying to find a piece of paper to scratch their name and their phone number and their email on. Where am I going to put that? I'm going to put that in my wallet. I'm going to put that in my pocket. I'm going to get home and that thing's going to be wrinkled up. I'm not going to know who that's from. They've written it in their handwriting. I can't figure out what it says. It's a terrible way to do business. So be prepared. Always be prepared. Just like the Boy Scouts, right? Be prepared. Boy Scouts know a thing or two.
Yeah, absolutely. For a perfect example, I do have a business card on me. It actually just brings up the next point. Here's my first one. Here's the front.
That's perfect.
And on the back, it just has a little bit about my show.
Well, there you go. Then you're all set.
Also, I have a wrestling belt with my logo on it. Do you want to see it?
Sure.
Basically...
I want to see a wrestling belt.
Basically, when I came up with this, I wanted to reward myself for my hard work. And my brother made a joke about it because he said you don't give yourself trophies. Trophies are earned. So I'm going to change
Here's what I would say to that. It's a prop.
Yeah, it is, pretty much.
It's a prop. When I first started doing comic conventions back in 1996, the first thing I did before I hit my first comic convention was back in the punk days, I had my hair dyed purple. And it was, out to about here, and it was purple. And then the next time I came around and did a show in that town, my hair was bubblegum pink. And another year it was green, I think. But the idea was that I was attracting attention to myself. And this was, you talk about 1996, 1997. Not that many people had dyed hair back in those days. Right. And certainly not too many men. It was a bold move. But people sure knew who I was. So it was a prop.
It's funny. I interviewed someone who, usually I approach people like I approached you. Mm-hmm. And like I said, 2 subjects I want to ask you. But, this guy approached me. He was a wrestling fan. It's like, all right, usually I end the show like I'm going to do with you. It's like, what was your first impression? What made you say yes being on the show? But I said to him, you actually approached me. So what was it that got your attention? And he said, well, I came across your channel and your channel art, and I saw you had your own wrestling belt. And I could have, the reason I have my own wrestling belt is for people who want to see it. I banged it up, the centerpiece, the top piece, kept coming off, so I had to glue it. So, yeah, I kind of smeared it a little. But, the whole point of it, I could have had, Season 1, Season 2, little trophies, and I'm like, well, they have a wrestling belt. Maybe I can do something with this.
Right.
And I was like, well, if you look at it, it has my logo on it. I designed it all myself. It's made of leather. And I would say this is a perfect example as a kid with a learning disability. If I can do this, but anyone out there who has any types of disabilities, labels do not dictate who you are and who you're going to be. And this thing is great. Of course, I messed it up a little bit, but, it's imperfect. I'm imperfect. But, like you said, it's a prop. It helps you get your message out there. It helps you get your brand out there.
Exactly.
Now, the next question, well, what's your opinion about the belt? I know it looks gay, but do you...
No, I think it's great. I think you should wear it at the convention.
That's what I wanted to do. My dad's like...
Man. It's a prop.
You would think this is funny. My dad said, if you go out with your belt... Don't even bother. I would be surprised to come back, but they're going to probably throw a net over you.
Well, they threw a net over Tarzan. He did okay.
Well, that's true. Tarzan came from the jungle.
That's right. They threw a net over him.
Now,
don't be worried about people throwing nets over you. That's the least of our worries.
Hey, you want to get yourself...
Generally, it'll never happen.
No, absolutely. You want to get yourself out there, you have to take chances.
That's right.
Now, the next question I was going to ask you is, when someone, say you're at a booth, because a lot of people say this is soliciting, and now for people who want to know, when is it appropriate to approach someone as a professional but not go over that line of soliciting? I'll give you a perfect example of what I mean.
Okay.
You're at a booth. You're the owner and you want to interact with everyone. I walk over to you, say, hey, I can't even talk. I walk over to you, say, hey, my name's Keith Andrew. I'm the creator of the KeithAndrewNetWork. Here's my business card. I would love to have you on the show. Is that okay, or is that soliciting?
No, they can only say one of two things. They can say yes or no. And if they say no, either they're busy, cranky, or maybe it wouldn't be a good guest anyway. It takes all kinds to make a world. And I go to conventions. When I tell you before that I was, I had purple hair when I first started going to conventions, that was when I was marketing my comic book. Since then, I've gotten into running comic conventions. And so now I have to go up to all the artists. Some know me, some never heard of me. Some heard of me, some don't know me by face. Some heard of the show, some haven't heard of the show. But I have to go to places, like I said, to New York Comic Con, Baltimore Comic Con, Boston Comic Con, and little shows in between and all over the place. And I have to book guests for my show. Now, because I'm a comic artist, I know a lot of other comic artists. But there's other comic artists that I don't know. I know of their work. I've never met them before. Some, you have a preconceived notion of what they're like. You've heard different things. This guy's a great guy. She's fantastic. He's a grouch. Whatever it may be. I want to find out myself. So I go up to each one. And all I say is, how you doing? My name's Cliff Galbraith. I run the East Coast Comic Con. Have you heard of it? And if they haven't heard of it, I show them the postcard with all the guests that are listed on it. What we do is we get a bunch of guests when we announce the show, probably 11 months before the show takes place. But we have a kind of a usual suspects.
Right.
Certain people that we can rely on that generally come every year or every 2 years. Some don't want to come every year. They don't want to wear out their welcome. So they come every 2 years. but we know we can generally rely. I've been in this long enough now. 5 years that I know who's going to come, who I can depend on, and we got a pretty good reputation. And so I can contact these people right after the show. I say, you want to come back next year? Of course. Some people will tell me right on the floor on Sunday afternoon. They'll say, want to come back if you'll have me? Sure, fantastic. So I know I got about 10, 12 people. I can put them on the first postcard. And throughout the year, we'll make a series of different postcards. Even if we don't give them all out, we'll just throw them in the trash and start over again with some new ones as we add more and more guests.
Right.
But I'll take that postcard and I'll go to various conventions and I'll go up to artists. I'll introduce myself and I'll wait till they're not too busy. I'll catch them in a quiet moment maybe, or I'll catch them even in an elevator or on an escalator, or they could be outside having a cigarette, or walking across the street, going back to their hotel. There's a lot of places where you can, I don't want to say corner people, but you can catch up with them. And you just be yourself, and you tell them what you want to do, and they're either interested or they're not. And it's nothing personal. Some people are cranky, some people are pleasant, some people are indifferent. But what are we trying to do? We're trying to do business. We're trying to make a connection, and we're trying to put out our product. And your product is your podcast, your videos. Mine is my convention or my comic books, whatever it may be. But my dad used to always tell me, never take it personal. Never take it personal. And the other thing is, you have no idea what's going on in that person's life on that particular day. So they could be in pain. They could have severe back pain. They could have come in on an airplane from somewhere to be at that convention, sat on a cramped plane for 6-7 hours. Maybe their plane had to circle the airport and they've already got back pain. Maybe they're going through a divorce. Maybe they have health issues. Maybe they're having trouble with their kids.
Right.
Maybe they're having money trouble. I mean, you could make a whole list of stuff why somebody is not interested in talking to you at this moment. And it has zero to do with you. And it probably has zero to do with you. So never take it personal, what anybody says. And if they turn you down, you know what? Go back to them next year. They'll be there next year at the show. If you go to like someplace like New York Comic Con, they'll be there next year, maybe. And you approach them then, and maybe they're in a totally different mood. And sometimes, and here's the thing: you're basically doing sales, and sales have a lot to do with familiarity. So if they see you and they go, "Oh yeah, you're that guy Keith," all right, I guess I'll do it. After maybe 3 years,
yeah,
they'll say, "Okay," because you keep coming back to me, and they're like, "Okay, I remember this guy." That's all it is, just familiarity.
Now, but for following up on that, is there a professional way or is there a soliciting way? Like, well, where do you find the boundaries of just saying, you're introducing yourself? A lot of people say it's soliciting.
To me, soliciting is you're trying to sell somebody something. And, if you're trying to sell them insurance or timeshare to a hotel down in Coconut Grove, Florida, then I could see why they wouldn't want you around. But if you just want to have a Skype video and talk about their career, most people are not going to be against that unless they're really, really busy.
Oh, absolutely. Now with the last 10 minutes left of the show, I'm going to pass it over to you. And I do have a couple questions off the air if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
But passing the show over to you, was there anything you want to promote, anything you want to talk about? Who were some of your favorite guests that you have? Who do you want at your conventions? Maybe me, but
be good. Well, the thing I want to promote is the East Coast Comic Con. It's April 29th and 30th at the Meadowlands Exhibition Center in Secaucus, New Jersey. It's 15 minutes outside of New York City. It's right there. There's plenty of parking. Unlike doing shows in the big city, there's plenty of parking. The hotel rates are pretty good. And the difference between our show and the big shows is that you can see a lot of the same people that are at those shows, but you can spend some time with them. You can actually get to talk to them. You don't have to stand in long lines as often as you would at a big convention. So the word intimate is bandied around a lot, but it is applicable to what we're doing. We have a much more intimate show. It's much more family oriented, and it's just not as stressful. If to bring kids to a show in a major city can be a stressful thing. For a simple reason, you might turn around and say, "Where's one of the kids?" That kind of thing, and never find them again. So at our show, there's not the huge crowds, and people find that to be comforting. So it's a much more laid back situation. The price is a little better than in the big cities, so you have all those advantages. The show is a 2-day show; it's not a 4-day show. We've got some great guests. We've got when you asked me who my favorite guests were, my goodness, most of them are fantastic because I got to pick them myself. If I don't like somebody, I'm not going to invite them.
Right.
If they're a crank or if they're difficult to deal with, I just don't invite them. So we have a very friendly group. Probably one of my favorite guests was when we were starting off in Asbury Park, and we had Al Jaffe from Mad Magazine. And Al was a favorite of mine since I was very, very young. So getting to meet Al and spend some time with him at our show and having him as a guest of honor was a real honor for me. We've had Herb Trimp, who has since passed away, who was the co-creator of Wolverine. Jim Steranko, who created a lot of the Nick Fury stories with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the early days. He took over for Jack Kirby. Jim is always entertaining. He's a fascinating guy and a lot of fun to be around. Bob Camp and Bill Ray, who worked on the Ren and Stimpy show. Bob was a co-creator of the TV show. Bill Ray and Bob wrote a lot of the episodes. And I don't think you'd meet two funnier guys than Bob and Bill. And very funny in their own way. Very different.
No, absolutely. And there's a couple people I would recommend if you don't mind.
Sure.
There's friends with Kurgan Mayhem.
Okay.
He did Goldar from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Okay.
Did he ever play Mortal Kombat in DC?
No.
I'm friends with Richard Epcar. He does the Joker now.
Okay.
I'm friends with Justin Credible, an ECW wrestler. I have a we're getting to friendship. We're more of acquaintance. I have acquaintances of Velvet Sky and Malena Perez, Angel Love, Vince Russo, mostly the wrestlers. But, there's people out there, who I have had the opportunity to interview. I can always pass them your way if you would like to have them at your conventions.
That'd be cool. We worked for several months trying to get the Iron Sheik to come. And I don't really know what happened. After about 30 emails, I don't know really what happened. So booking people for shows becomes a job in itself.
Right.
And it becomes an art form in itself. And you have to take a lot of abuse sometimes. And that abuse is people who don't get back to you. People get back to you with the same question over and over. Some of the guests are older, so you have to be able to communicate with them in a way that they will understand. Each guest is different. And there's a lot of times when you think you have a guest, you really think you've got them. And they say, okay, send me a contract. based on what we've talked about. Then you just never hear from them again. I have a couple of those right now, and I'm like, where are you? You know, and I can keep sending emails and making phone calls, and if I don't get them, then they've moved on, or they got another commitment, or they're just not interested. I don't know what some of them are doing or thinking, so I just move on to somebody else. So yeah, we're always interested, and we're always looking for good wrestling guests. We don't have anyone officially booked yet. We have a few wrestlers that we're talking to, but as I said, until we get that signed contract, until their plane lands and they show up at the hotel,
right?
There's no guarantees ever.
No, same here as for my talk show. Like for an example, I had former wrestler Big Ragme advertised saying this Wednesday he will definitely be here doing the interview. And so I'm not in the mood. Something came up. And I'm like, okay. And it's kind of like, you couldn't just tell me a couple hours before or just the day before? Why did I advertise it? I'm like, I forget. Well, like you said, it's the same thing. Until you get to see the person and you're on the same page, yes, it's still up in the air.
I guess that's the way it is with everything. Until the paper's signed, until the person shows up, or whatever deal you've made is in your hand, then anything can happen.
No, absolutely. I'm gonna ask you one last hard-hitting question, and then
sure,
you can ask me anything you want.
Okay.
Say as I approached you to be a guest at your convention, was everything you saw of me, do you think that I don't have a big media following to be at your convention, or do you think you'll have to wait more than 4 years to actually be at a convention? What is your opinion?
Well, how long have you been running this podcast?
3.5. This June will be 4.
And how many followers do you have?
I'm taking a guess. Let's see if I remember correctly. My fan page on Facebook has over 350. Twitter has over 579. It keeps going up, between 580, 581. Now it's 579. Instagram's over 100. And let's see, 100, 300, so that's 4, 4, and 5. I suck at math. I don't know what's 4 or 5.
Well, most guests have Twitter followers into the thousands.
Right.
So we start looking at something in the range of about 3,000 that there's people actually listening to what they're saying all the time. And so if we tweet out that they're a guest, then we'll get a response from them. They'll retweet it, and then their fans will see it, and then hopefully they'll buy tickets. So I always look for about 3,000 to 3,500, and that's with celebrities even. There are people that do horror. There are people that are child actors. That they were actors when they were children that are not active actors, but they have people following them. And I look at their Twitter page and they have 127 people following them. That doesn't mean that they're not going to be a good guest. It just means that they're not actively communicating with enough people on Twitter to make that a deciding factor. If you follow me on that.
No, absolutely. And, I do have a couple of famous people who will have my back.
Mm-hmm.
But, at the same time, what is your honest opinion? I like to hear it. And for the record,
sure.
Do you think I'm at the point where I should just start getting myself out there, or do you think I should just wait like another year or so? Like, how do you know when you're ready?
Well, your podcast is on YouTube, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we haven't had any YouTube stars at our show at all. That's not the direction that we go in. If you want to come to our show, that's great. We'll give you a press pass and that sort of thing.
All right.
But as far as somebody that does signings and things like that, we haven't booked anybody that's a YouTube personality. And strictly because our show is comics. It's comics and comic related, yes. So Star Wars people would be comics related. And anything sci-fi is related to that. Horror, things like that. So horror, sci-fi, comics, they go together. But people who are generally YouTube phenomena, that's not our audience. It's not our audience. At least at this time, it's not our audience.
Well, if you don't mind me for saying, well, you said you only cater to comic books, sci-fi and horror. What about wrestling?
Oh, wrestling too. I'm sorry. Yes. Wrestling too. But wrestlers, they kind of fall into that hero thing, like superheroes. They're our closest representation of superheroes, especially for me the older ones.
No, absolutely. The Hulk Hogan's modern day Captain America.
Right. I miss Macho Man.
Yeah, he was one of the best. I actually got the chance to interview his brother. You should listen to that. I have to send you the interview. It was really good.
I used to love him. I used to love the way he spoke. He was just infinitely entertaining. He was a funny human being.
No, absolutely. Now, wrapping up our segment, was there anything you wanted to talk about? Did he have a good time being a guest on my show?
Oh, of course. Yeah, this was great. You and I had talked a little bit offline about having disabilities.
Yes.
And some of us are better at hiding them than others. I'm a dyslexic, right now I also am recovering from Lyme disease, which has eaten up a lot of my time and energy and money. Costs a lot to get well, and a lot of the treatments aren't covered by insurance. And so, like I said, we were talking about disabilities, and my weakness is the dyslexia. I have a very tough time dealing with numbers, understanding numbers. Matter of fact, I've got a guy from the ticketing company that company that handles our online ticketing, and we need to make some changes. And he sent me an email, and there was just a lot of numbers in it. And I wrote back, Chris, I have dyslexia. Can we just talk about this on the phone rather than me look at these numbers? Because I have to go into the website in my account and change certain things to change certain settings. And those numbers just look like squiggles after a while to me. So I think it's important for people to realize that nobody's perfect. We've all got problems. We've got obvious problems. Some people have problems, being able to walk, being able to see, being able to speak, and some are more obvious than others. But everybody's got something wrong with them, or something that they wish they didn't have, or have been trying to deal with. Whether it's substance abuse, that's a big one, right?
Right.
You generally don't see that on the surface. You might see them if they're acting out or whatever, but there's a lot of people that go along for a long time and completely undetected. So I think we all have something that we have to overcome. It could be shyness. It could be ego. And on and on. So I think a lot of times the only cure for it, a lot of these things, is time. Time for us to find a way to navigate around those deficiencies. And I think in some way we're given some advantage. And sometimes we don't know what that is yet. So somebody who has a speech impediment, maybe they're really good with math. In my case, I have dyslexia, but I can draw very well. And in further studying dyslexia, what I found was that Da Vinci was dyslexic. Leonardo da Vinci was dyslexic, and he was so dyslexic that if you could read Italian, you would see that his notes could only be read with a mirror.
Right.
Okay? And he's considered a genius. But he, couldn't write numbers right. He couldn't, he had his problems. So when I read that, and a friend of mine who's a famous artist, he did album covers for the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and things like that, and he's dyslexic, and he would always talk about a book called The Gift of Dyslexia, and I thought, how could this be a gift? And what he told me was that a disproportionate amount of dyslexics are left-handed. A disproportionate amount of left-handed people are creative people. So that's where we get our creativity from, some of us.
No, absolutely.
Right? So we have one deficiency, but then we have what I like to call a superpower.
Now, wrapping up the show, I do have a couple questions for you off the air. But
Okay.
I usually end my show going on the record, so all rights go to the factor. So the spin stops here.
Okay.
I'm trying to get myself on the factor. I'm a big fan of Bill O'Reilly. So going on the record, when I first approached you to be a guest on my talk show, what was your honest opinion? And after being a guest, how do you feel now?
Well, I've been on a lot of podcasts, and I think you did a great job. I think you run a pretty tight ship, and you know what you're doing, and you're a good interviewer. That's I've been on shows where people they were kind of winging it, but maybe because they were early on.
Right.
Okay? So I've never done a terrible podcast. All I can say, I've done some that were better than others, and this one's pretty good. I think you did a really good job.
No, I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to part 2, and I will look up more on your website. But wrapping up our interview segment, it was a real honor and privilege to have you as a guest, and I'm looking forward to part 2.
All right, great. This was a lot of fun.